Hey everyone, it's Tom Seymour from VHS Masker. I'm an independent filmmaker and I make feature-length independent films. I talk about how to make those films and then how to distribute them and then also the film festival circuit. I throw in a lot of other stuff here and there. For instance, this new microphone setup I have, my wife actually got this for me for my birthday. So thanks, Steph. I have a microphone arm, which I hadn't had before. And then this nice mic, the brand is Mayono. And so far, so good. It does seem like you do have to do a little noise canceling with this thing, but I think the audio quality seems good so far. You let me know. What do you think about it in the comments? I was using this Blue Yeti mic, and ironically, this whole thing set up. But sometimes these things happen, and in my head, I'm like, did I somewhere in the back of my head know this was all going to happen or whatever? But I recently hit the 500th episode of VHS Masker, formerly known as New York Cine, and I'll explain a little bit about that. But if you followed my VHS Masker films, which had been distributed for NBC Universal, but in the New York Times and all these other things, you might know a little bit about the podcast that I host. But when I first started, I was using this Blue Yeti mic, and I did the podcast with Dave Lute and Ken Powell and James Richardson. And so over the years, I've sort of kept the fire burning. In 2021, we had a reunion. It was with those guys, and it was our 400th episode because I had counted all the stuff we had done on Podbean. That was our primary place that we did the podcasting, and we were actually number one in 2012 and 2013, the number one podcast in entertainment on Podbean. But as the years went on, the traffic really became more on Instagram and TikTok, and less on YouTube. But then later, when Shorts came along on YouTube, then the traffic rivaled those other platforms. And so the ironic thing is, I technically probably get more views now across all those platforms. So the video will be posted on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and then it will be promoted through Facebook, X, Blue Sky here and there. I try to Rumble. There's some stuff on there, but it doesn't do much. And so in result, I could, things, if I do like a show that hits right, I could easily get like 5,000 views or something like that. Lower side, probably like 2 or 3K, but still that's very good. It makes it worth it. And there's this feeling that people are watching. I've built my sub base up to about 50K, which is good. If you're an independent filmmaker, you've been doing this for a while, maybe you can see what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong. I try to be honest about what's working and what's not. And if you're a first-time filmmaker, maybe you can pick some stuff up as well. But so this Blue Yeti, I'm obviously going to keep it. Still works. Did me well. And but I moved over to this other one. If I even bumped it, you would hear it in the podcast. So hopefully the arm setup is a little better. One of the things I have going on is that my feature-length documentary, Video Dreams, which chronicles my 30 years of independent filmmaking, making horror films and action films and sci-fi films and all this stuff, low budget, underground, but all features and all distributed. Something that I'm proud of and that anyone can do. I came across these old tapes, and Video Dreams is a documentary. It's built from archive footage, my last 30 years of filmmaking. And one of the tapes, this is the sad part of these kind of tapes. These are high 8 tapes. I had literally 20 or 30 of these high 8 tapes, and sadly, they've been essentially demagnetized, which means there's no longer information on them. Over the years, I bought different high 8 camcorders to try to play the tapes on various formats or whatever. They're blank at this point. And that is the nature of some of these tapes. This was a high 8 tape. These type of tapes, actually, not only did I shoot my first feature-length film, Everything Moves Alone, on 16mm film, I had it transferred to high 8 tape to make an edit because that's the only deck we had at home. And we used an early form of Premiere that would crash all the time. It only had 9 gigs of hard drive storage. It was a nightmare. Much harder to do back then. In the late 90s, people were not doing. It's so easy now compared. New York premiere TKJ. What that is Thrill Kill Jack. And as I recall, we got selected to New York International Film and Television Festival, and we played. I think it was in the La Bar Bat, which was like an underground thing. It was like one of these basement bars, kind of, like East Village, St. Mark's. You'd have those bars that were like 2 or 3 steps down. It was a place like that. I forget exactly where it was, but that was one of our first New York premieres. And then we would go on to screen our movies in New York. And in a lot of ways, New York back then was more friendlier than Connecticut to its filmmakers. This just says California trip. And as I recall, we took some footage of Mike Oransky, Phil Garrett, and myself. We went to Los Angeles, and we took a trip and drove up to San Francisco and all that stuff. And ironically, one of my oldest friends, Mike Oransky, he would move to California to work for IGN, and then 100 Thieves and a bunch of other places in San Francisco and both Los Angeles. You could say my return to California is in the form of screening my movie at San Francisco Indie Fest. And we're going there in February 7th. My film Video Dreams is going to play at the Roxie Theater. And Mike's going to come. He's going to drive up from LA. And Tim Coolwig's going to come, who has worked with me for many years, especially composing music and helping with the producing. It's very interesting. There's a few culminations of a few things. New York and California, and hitting the 500th episode of VHS Massacre, upgrading my mic, and sometimes these things. Maybe I'm just seeing the connections and things, but I find it pretty interesting. We entered 114 film festivals with this film because we didn't know what to expect. Tim and I, we saved up and split it and paid to enter these festivals, because it obviously will cost money, although you can find free film festivals to enter on Film Freeway, and I have entered a number of those. But you end up spending $2-3 grand a piece, easy. But if our goal was to play in 40 cities around the world. It didn't matter. We just wanted a screen. As Debbie Rochon said, if there was a screen, some chairs, and a handful of people, that was fine, as long as it's screening, Virtual fests are good as well. And that's something that has happened too with the film festival circuit. A lot of the festivals will have a virtual element. If they're specific, they'll be geo-locked, because there are festivals that aren't geo-locked that are amazing. But something like San Francisco Independent Film Festival had, basically, if you're playing in the theater, they'll also do a virtual fest, but it's geo-locked to the region so that you don't jeopardize other premieres in other areas. Other festivals that will host non-geo-locked presume that you're not worried about other premiere statuses. So it's not like it's just you have to be careful about what you choose. You don't want to blow your premiere status, although in the end, you have to wonder how much it really matters. We had a thing where we were holding out, trying to get into NYC Docs, which is the top documentary film festival. We held off, and we didn't enter the other stuff, and and ultimately we didn't get in, which then put us in a bind where we didn't have a New York premiere. So then I ended up I probably entered 10 New York film festivals. We got into about 3, and we're waiting to hear back from another 2 or 3. But we actually didn't get into a lot, which is really interesting. The concept of I don't know if New York has just changed. New York has always been hard to screen at, always been hard, and it does seem like times have changed a little bit. It's odd to know where I've really been killing it with Video Dreams is the underground film festival circuit. And underground films are really important. Ironically, I just was watching some of Putney Swope which is Robert Downey Sr.'s film. And, he was a famous underground filmmaker. Obviously, his son is this movie star, a fine actor, of course. But it was interesting to see underground film festivals, underground films like from Robert Downey. And then also I looked at John Cassavetes' Shadows. Years ago, I was compared to John Cassavetes when I was making Everything Moves Alone, because it was like an underground drama and shoestring budget and all that. And sadly enough, I never watched a lot of Cassavetes films, but I saw Shadows, and it was very interesting, and I can see really good acting. And you can tell they didn't have a lot of money, but it's very fascinating. So underground films are really interesting. They're not necessarily the most commercial films, but they can be controversial. They can be gritty. They're usually trying to say something. They can be wildly experimental. They can be cool documentaries about niche subjects. And they can also be avant-garde or auteur. And I actually will argue that the auteurs, the auteur filmmaking, meaning like that sort of meaning author, sort of that new wave concept that the director was the creative head and the author. I think that survives in the underground film festival circuit. It survives a bit throughout Europe. You have these filmmakers that will push limits and stuff like that, and probably are not tied up. I think our underground film festivals are where that survives more often. And so I recommend that. We always have these dreams of, these Hollywood dreams, becoming this big star and all that stuff. But a lot of those people are not free. They don't get to act in the stuff they want. They don't get to write the stuff they want. They don't get to direct the stuff they want. But you know who does? Underground filmmakers. We do. Our budgets may not be big. We may have to work a day job and save up some money and work with a few other people. Some people do fundraising, which is fine. But like Roger Corman said, who was, they call him exploitation filmmaker, meaning he's marketing exploitation. So he makes genre films like monster movies and action movies and car chase movies. That's what exploitation means. He thought that you should be able to make a film. You shouldn't have to spend $100 million to see your vision through. So big fan of Roger Corman. So in any case, if you make that kind of film, then if you're making a romantic comedy, underground film festival circuit is probably not right for you. But it's definitely worth looking into. So we're waiting. So anyway, I think we have about 38 official selections. We're aiming for 40 cities. I think maybe we can get up to 50 cities. In New York, we will play at New Filmmakers New York, the longest continuously running film festival in New York City. And then Gothamite Film Awards selected us. I'm not sure, to be announced with that one. And then we did screen at Film Noir Cinema in Brooklyn, great independent theater, and we'll see what happens there. In addition, we're screening at the North Film Festival in Spain, Barcelona, which will be cool. And so the whole goal was to get attention to the film so that when we went on streaming, people would know the film. It would be sort of quote unquote famous. And then if we distributed, the label we've been using a lot is MVD. If we used them, they do a really good revenue split. So we would keep the vast majority of the money. I think we keep 70%, so that if it did well, we would do okay. Now, you're not going to clean up. You're frankly, on a good year, I'll make a couple grand off of several films. So it just depends what you're doing. Some people can make more. I distributed a lot of my films through Trauma Entertainment. But when you sign with Trauma, and like, if you don't know Trauma, Lloyd Kaufman is the president. He directed Toxic Avenger and Class of Nukem High, all these wonderful B movies. I think he's a really super important figure. And if you want to know why, watch VHS Massacre 1 and 2. Trauma put these out, and frankly, they, because of Trauma's fan base, embraced them. And we did our own marketing and pushed in our own way and entered our own festivals. That sort of synergy created a real brand. So that's kind of what VHS Massacre is, thanks to, to Trauma. They're not going to pay out, but if you're looking to, you could say, I don't want to say get on the ground floor, but like, there's not that many places like Trauma, which are learning grounds for independent filmmakers. Roger Corman used to do that. Charlie Band still does that to some degree with Full Moon Entertainment. If you can get in there, make something there, that's amazing. But Trauma, you have all of these legends who started there. Everyone from like Sam Jackson, Marissa Tomei, I think Eli Roth, and even Abrams. I think Abrams did something there. But then you have Matt Stone, Trey Park from South Park. Their first film was distributed there. And then you have James Gunn, and, there's list goes on and on, actually. And so I was proud to basically work with them for over a decade. I'm still doing films with Lloyd, hoping to get him for my new doc I'm working on now called Enter the Television, about TV promotion and commercials. We'll see how that goes. But that's another thing too. Like, if you really want to get into independent films, you may have to like volunteer your time. It's not a bad idea to go out and try to make your own film, and then seek out distributors that may take a shining to your film, and understand that your first few films, you may not make a lot of money on, you may lose money on them, but they can help career build. And I have always worked a day job. I have been in the field at CBS and NBC, and but I've also, between those jobs, I literally have hauled junk, and I've worked at bookstores, so it's very all over the place. So you may have to find do the job that you have to do. Frankly, Video Dreams, which is an 82-minute feature-length doc, in film festivals now, and will be out, I assume, next year, 2027, maybe, streaming, on all the usual places. It'll stream pretty much everywhere except Netflix. It probably even, Peacock TV, NBC Universal, Movie, Prime, Apple TV, kind of Tubi. I love Tubi. Pretty much everywhere except Netflix. Yeah, it can be done if you want it. I would recommend making a horror film if you love horror. People always say, "Well, horror is really popular now." Horror has always been popular since, I think you can track it, since the 1950s. It's popular in the 50s. If you think of all those monster movies and B movies and Bela Lugosi and all that stuff, it has basically been popular then, and then it keeps, there's some dips and stuff, but it essentially keeps getting more popular. And horror has been around, obviously, since the beginning of film in the early 1900s. Thomas Edison made Frankenstein. I think it was 1905. So horror has always been with us. So is exploitation films. If you watch VHS Massacre 1, you literally see Edison, who invented film, definitely. Who when he had the Nickelodeons, he was showing films of dancing girls and strong men. It was exploitation from the very beginning. So any film snobs out there who think of film as too lofty and a high art, please remember that it started with dancing girls and strong men. Anyway, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.